Class to Oblivion. I am one of your co-hosts, Carter Barton. Welcome to episode 9. I'm joined by my co-host, Embodiment of Lightning. I think that aptly describes you, Mr.
That's a good description. Yeah,
Mr. Zach Donahue. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. It's this is gonna be a fun topic when we dive into it and talk about it. But this, like, again, I think the ground, the meta, this everything is shifting around in the Flesh and Blood world right now, which is pretty exciting. So it'll be fun to dive in and talk about that a little bit. But also like talk about like what it means to deck build, how to deck build, kind of giving yourself those principles that you can work on and hopefully improve as a player as well. That we dive in later.
Yes. We are very professional as show hosts who did mention our topic, which is Flesh and Blood Deck Building 101. Welcome to class, semester. It's in session.
That's one.
It's been great. So today's topic is a little bit more new player inclined. However, there should be some good bits for all levels of play, which is going to be great. So some housekeeping at the top. Hey, we have a Discord server. I keep mentioning this. I'm going to keep mentioning it because you guys should join it. There's a link down in the description below, whether you are on YouTube or Spotify, in order to join the server. Come ask us questions, be a part of the community, and do all that kind of stuff. I'm sure we will be doing events in the future, eventually, when we are busy and maybe don't procrastinate on doing stuff like that. Anyways, and then weeks in Flesh and Blood. Zach, how's Armory?
It was good. I just had one this week. I back on New Acilio for Continuum. Deck is fine. It's just missing. We've talked about this offline plenty. It's just like it's just missing a little bit of power, which is like cool. It is what it is. Like I've done well at Armory on the deck. Cool. That's all I need to do with it. Putting it down for the next couple of weeks or so, and just kind of retool original Acilio and play that at a level that I'm like, okay, cool. If there was a Pro Tour or RTN or a ProQuest or something like that coming up, like I could take that deck and feel comfortable on it. That's the goal. I don't think I'm going to get the opportunity to play another RTN or ProQuest on Acilio. I'm fairly confident that deck is going to rotate before the next RTN or ProQuest season. That is my hot take. He's right at that threshold where it's just like, 400, 350-ish LL points to go. Maybe it's even less than that. But it's one of those things where it's just like very easily can snowball real quick, win a couple callings, maybe win Pro Tour or something like that, and just gets over the line. And then it's just like, well, I want to make sure I have a couple decks ready to go backup wise. So Aurora is one of those decks actually. And then because like she got some help with Skyward Serenade getting unbanned. Like now you can kind of go wide enough, do the lightning thing, which is nice. But like again, just back on that deck, have some fun. But yeah, I don't know. I gotta play Flesh and Blood. You gotta go to armories, fun things like that, which is always good. So I think I finally have my Acilio puzzle pieces complete. So that's really what matters out of Gem Packs. So
yeah, I have to admit I've been very pleased with Gem Pack 5. I like a lot of the contents. I like a lot of the extra cards. They started reprinting some of the more armory deck centered cards, which is just pretty cool. Even I pulled a foil one of like the 1-for-5 brute card that you can only play if you've
the Run
discarded a 6. Yeah, like Run Roughshod is in Gem Pack 5. I think that's a really cool addition. It's a good reprint, so like I'm not mad about that kind of stuff. I had 2 armories. I think it's the last recording. I've been on a Ziggy Bender. I think the deck is very, very fun. And I changed up my sideboard by like 30 cards last week. Like I changed a very core componentry of the deck because I wanted to fit blue Somersault in it, and I think it is very strong. I don't think it is broken by any means, but I think it is just a good utility piece that Ziggy can use, which is great. I've been on kind of like a weird switchboard. You're able to play like Aphrodite into like the Fangs and the Phis and the Syndras, and then you play Iris of Reality into more of the slower mid-range decks. So the Betsy's and the Pleiades and all the Guardians and all that jazz. So yeah, I really like the deck. And then Vigorous Smash Up got unbanned, so I'm finally prepping my deck for the Las Vegas side events. because I don't have a Sage deck that I really enjoy right now. So as soon as I saw that get unbanned, Tough Nut is back on the menu. I'm a huge fan of Unexpected Backhand. I think that card is really, really funny. And I will be taking that to side events to hopefully juice some people because it's funny.
Are you planning to play in the showdown, the call? What's your plan
So
for Vegas?
I will be playing Calling for Vegas. I did not qualify for Pro Tour, which is fine.
Okay.
I will most likely be playing Puffin still. I think that the deck's perfectly fine. I think it's really good, and having lost Victor as a matchup, you can just tweak your sideboard a little bit. I think null time zones are back in if Acilio is going to be very popular, and the thing about that card that's really cool is that into both Gone in a Flash Pile as well as Arcane Acilio, like it is an active card.
Yep.
So yeah, looking forward to things. So today's main topic: deck building in Flesh and Blood. Did a little research on this topic heading into this recording. Doesn't seem like there's been a lot of extremely new content regarding this topic for at least a decent bit of time. A lot of the videos I saw were like 3 to 5 years old, and I definitely think the game has grown since then. Off the top, if you'd like to shout out.
Yeah, so one of my locals, Jimmy, who's in our Discord as well, threw out the idea because we were talking last week on our episode about like deck building and kind of like some of the deck building decisions that get kind of made with like things like Skyward Serenade getting unbanned, Talk a Big Game, and having those cards that you get kind of like built to. And then he posted the questions like, hey, can you guys do something or talk about deck building? And we threw some ideas back and forth and we're like, yeah, this is gonna be a full episode. Like we can't just do this as like a question, talk about it for 5-10 minutes and then carry on. It's a full on episode, so we're gonna dive into that. So shout out Jimmy for the idea to help, kind of pushing us that forward. And also it's a really good time to talk about deck building in Flesh and Blood right now. It's just, again, we got that's big rotation coming. Victor's gonna be started that big wave with that, but we're gonna see some heroes go. But like again, I think those, especially as we get into the more nuance of this stuff, like you can kind of see the picture of, well, what does it take to build a deck? And we're not just saying like, hey, grab a deck off February. That's helpful, that's cool, but like also if you're grabbing a deck off of February, like identifying these things that we go through as well is helpful for you to understand like what deck am I playing, how does this play out, and things like that as well.
Yeah, so this topic is definitely something we were going to cover originally, I'm sure at some point, but appreciate you, Jimmy, for pushing us to do so, because I think this is an excellent time, as you said, to cover this stuff.
Yeah.
With the powering down of the game, so to speak, I think deck building becomes even more important than it already has been. So,
agreed.
All right, so diving into this topic, starting from the top, right? Like when you are building a Flesh and Blood deck, there are primarily 2 reasons that you are going to be building that deck or designing that deck. Option 1, you really like that hero. You like their playstyle, you like how they look, you like how they feel. Their card pool looks really interesting to you. Maybe you saw someone else playing it and you want to brew it yourself. Maybe it's a new hero from a new set and you want to just like try it out. That's more the casual route, right? A little bit more competitive route is, I actually think a lot of deck building comes from problem solving. So let's take Victor for instance, right? Victor was a meta deck, and I think some decks that were built with the intention of solving the problem on how to beat Victor. And that's the more competitive route of like looking at things. Both of them are perfectly valid. It's just one of them is probably within the lens of how do I win a Pro Quest? How do I win a Pro Tour? Like what deck can I gain percentage points on by playing this into certain heroes? And this is like an important question, right? It's like, what are you doing with your deck? It gives you a little bit of direction. So let's take the new Acilio, for instance. I think this is kind of a fun one. We can use that as our example this episode. So in your instance, Zach, I'm sure you were just thrilled about having another Lightning Wizard.
Agreed, yes. But it also like it, so I think with that, we didn't mention it, but I think it's important is like, especially comparing the 2 Acilios, is the original Acilio that we have that uses Gone in a Flash is a more aggro slanted, aggressive burn based type hero. However you want to describe it, it's that. But this newer Cilio plays a more slower game plan. You're doing things like preventing damage, chipping, sending arcane, things like that. So there's a different play style and thing going on. So you can't just be like, oh, well, old Acilio plays all of these cards, Gone in a Flash, Flitter in Charge, Instants, things like that, and throw them into this new deck and be like, okay, cool. What do I need to take out and adjust from there? You kind of have to build it from the ground up. So I think it's an interesting thought process to think about. And like again, like I said, I was very excited to have a new Lightning Wizard. Like I enjoyed all of my time I've had with both versions of Acilio, but original Acilio, I played that deck since the day Rosetta released, and I don't think I've played more than 2 or 3 armories not on that deck until Omens came out, and I'm going to shift right back to that deck next week. So again, it's a deck that I've grown with and I've experimented a lot with, and I have a lot of history kind of doing what we're talking about here today. But it was cool to see a new Lightning Wizard, but also to see a different thematic version of that type of hero class talent pairing together.
So you could probably say for you is like a little bit of a mixture, right? Like,
yeah,
you like the hero, you like the class, you like the cards that you have access to, but you also are enjoying kind of brewing it from a different perspective comparative to original Acilio.
100%.
Cool. All right, so we've identified our problem. We've chosen our hero that we want to build. What's next? Well, Zach and I were chatting about this, and I think we usually start with power cards. So what we define by power cards are majestics, legendaries or legendary equipment, cards that we would consider the core of the deck. They are going to be into every matchup or every game that you play, and they are what I would consider how you win the game with, right? Like they're the cards that are directly leading you to reducing your opponent's life total to 0 or winning with your alternative game plan. Right? Yep. These cards are the ice cream. Right? We're going to this is a small analogy I wrote into the script notes. The ice cream's the good part of the deck, right? It's the thing that everyone looks forward to, and it's the thing you show your friends. You go, look, check out this cool flavor I got. Maybe it's strawberry or like banana cream pie. I don't know. Whatever your preference is. These cards give direction to the deck. So like for New Acilio, name like 2 or 3 cards that you consider the ice cream.
Cosmic Flare, but like this again, New Acilio operates kind of a little different because you're doing a lot of things on your opponent's turn. There's the prevention things going on, but Cosmic Flare makes resources. It pairs off the key piece here. We're gonna talk about 2 legendary equipments is your Plutonic Starplate, which is your legendary chess piece. Play a lightning card, make a resource. Pretty good. And then obviously you're playing a wizard, so you have Storm Striders available to you, which is the pay a resource, kill your opponent on their turn card. In other words, but again, there's other uses for it, but again, for the most part, it's being used to set that kill turn up. So those are 2 of those big legendary equipment pieces that you're playing around. Cosmic Flare plays onto that game plan, but then also at the same time, you have cards like Strike Twice, Turn to Mindfire. You have the instants, the Breath of Instants, the Constella cards, which have that Starfall ability on them, but also do something of make a lightning flow, make a ponder, do other little things like that as well that further that game plan. And then cards like Echo Flash. If you've paid attention, Echo Flash is a beast of a card in Lightning Wizard as a whole, because if you discard it, you're just going to get 1 instant value. But New Acilio gives you that ability to play it out as well, so you can kind of create more offensive overlap in that regard as well. But again, there's a lot of other core pieces available there.
Yeah,
there's Comet Collision. There's other things. It's again a little bit more of a toolbox deck. Not the best example, but again, there's cards there. There's like, hey, I've got these 2 really strong equipment pieces. How can I play into them and further my game plan to help me win more games?
Yeah. So like of the cards you named, the ones that stick out to me as like an outsider looking in on that deck, obviously Storm Striders, right? Like that's the bread and butter. That's the card that is going to be winning you games a lot of the time. It allows you to just chip people's life total down to single digits, and then when they reach for lethal, you kill them in response. Um, Plutonic Starplate, that card is insane. Being able to just like cultivate interesting cost curves on your opponent's
Yep.
turn with the extra resource has felt really good in Ziggy, and I can imagine it's very good in New Asilio as well. And then like even Turn to Mindfire, I think it's a 2 for 5, right? That you can make a ponder when it connects. That's like cards that win the game. Is just Tall Arcane, being able to chip your opponent down. If they only have AB3, they can only prevent 3 damage. Carries the card into the next turn if you get the ponder. Feels really good. So yeah, like a lot of those cards are the cards that you want to be playing in every matchup. Obviously the equipment for sure, but some of the cards in the deck, like Echo Flash 2s, I'd consider that a bread and butter card, or a core card of the game plan.
I think I have 55 in my main board.
Sure.
But there's some of those cards that they're going to come out for certain matchups. But for the most part, I don't want to think about having to side 12 plus cards in and out of a game. So like for me, it's just like I'm going to build closer to 54, 55 card deck for that core, for that core ice cream that we're building, whatever that looks like, chocolate with fudge and brownies, whatever it may be. Like that core, I might go a little bit bigger than I need to, but I know I have additional tools available to me, and we're going to talk about that when we get to sideboarding. But it's again, one of those little things is just like identifying, one of the good things is like when you're building a deck on February or however else you choose to build decks, like you can look at like, hey, is this card legal in the hero that I'm playing, and like be like, oh cool, this going to further my game plan? Is this a good tool to have? Am I going to use it in other matchups? Thing again, you can play around with that stuff and you can ask yourself that question, which is again, if you build into February, you go to build a new hero, whatever it is, you choose the hero, and it's like everything pops up, and you can kind of filter down like, what am I looking for? I'm looking at my equipment. What are the strong legendary equipment pieces here I have available to me? What are those strong majestics that are going to push that big damage, whatever it is? Like we've seen that with, like, again, staying with the wizard class, like Kano was like, I want my blazing, I want my Aether Wildfire, and then I can have 54 more cards and I can win the game. Again, there's some other things going on there, but like I understand like those are such 2 big pieces that allow you to further and set up, hey, where am I going to be successful here?
Yeah. For reference, let's imagine that we have some viewers who have not played the game very much. Fabrary.net is a website that you can construct decks on. If I remind myself, I will put the link down in the description below. As Zach said, you can select the hero and then deck build accordingly online in your browser. And the cool part about it too is that if you want to figure out power cards or core cards for your deck, you can actually just filter by the rarity of the cards. Shocking news, Majestics tend to be more powerful than other cards. It's a statement of fact. It is the thing with card games that the rarity of a card often denotes the power level of a card. Are there some cases where that is not the case? Absolutely. Are there some insane rares and commons in Flesh and Blood? 100%. Sink Below, Fate Foreseen,
Lightning Press.
Like there's any number of very pushed rares and commons. But in general, Majestics are going to give you direction within your deck, as well as like legendary equipment pieces, right? So, all right.
I think before we move on to that next point, but like direction, I think that phrase is so important because it's like, what is my deck trying to do? If my deck is trying to be an aggro deck and like, oh, I want Fate Foreseen, Sink Belows, Drag Down, and some other defense reaction in my deck. Well, like now I'm not an aggro deck, so like I'm drifting away from like the direction where my deck is supposed to be. If I'm an aggro deck, I want to have lots of cards that don't cost any resources and say go again on them. To quote some really smart guy that I know, paying for things is dumb. And if you're an aggro deck, paying for things isn't going to help you further a game plan. There might be times when you need to, and like weapons cost resources and things like that, but you can bake that into the cost curve that we're going to talk about a little bit later as well, or your resource base and things like that as well. So like understanding the direction and then also making sure you choose cards that align with that direction as well, rather than be like, well, these are the power cards, and then I'm trying to play this game plan. I'm like, well, those 2 things are incompatible with each other.
Yeah. And that's kind of the fun part too, is that you can at this stage you can kind of determine if you need to build multiple decks, if that makes sense. I've had in the case previously where I have loved a Majestic that gets printed. And I will name my favorite. So Cryptic Crossing is a card that came out in Dynasty. It's a Runeblade card. I have never seen anyone else play it. It is one of my favorite
Nick Gabler play it once.
Stupid build around cards. And at the time I was playing Viserai. Here's the thing. With the build of Viserai that was good, that card was not. So you kind of had to play two different versions of the deck if you wanted to make one thing work and something else that was out of line work, right? And that's perfectly fine. But, a good deck is oftentimes going to be in one direction. All the cards are going to be pushing you towards your primary game plan, and that's how you win the game. So,
yeah. And your primary game plan could be, there could be multiple avenues towards that.
Yeah.
I think about, there's been heroes where it's like, well, they block out on certain turns so they can set a card in Arsenal and it sets them up for a power turn next. It doesn't mean that they're not playing towards their game plan. They're recognizing like life totals, game situation, other things going on. That's more of a gameplay principle going on there. But again, they're still being like, I'm still going to be an aggressive deck, or I need to be a defensive deck, or whatever it is. Like they're still on that game plan. They're not like, hey, here's this card that costs 5 resources and I'm an aggro all red deck. It's just like, well, you're never going to be able to pitch for that. Like that's one of the things we saw with Dromai. Really good example of this is Dromai ran like 54 red cards, maybe 6 blues. She was on like Passy Mirage and maybe like 3 something else. And like so many early builds of Dromai wanted to play
Dracona Optimi.
Yeah, Dracona Optimi, which is the 6-cost dragon that is awesome. Super cool. Except for the fact that, like, how are you going to have 6 resources? You need 2 blues in hand, that card in Arsenal, or something else going on, and to be able to make it work. If you're pitching 2 blues, you're going Ash negative there. There's all these other things going on for the Dromai thing. It's just like, it became to the point where it's like, well, this isn't working. Eventually, Dromai decks took that out. I think they took Dominia out as well, which was the 4-cost, and they just went like, if they're going to have one big dragon, it was the 5-cost Tumultai, which allowed you to destroy equipment, which is a pretty strong thing. And at the time, it was one of the few like reliable equipment destruction cards, and you could play into the fact that like, hey, I need a blue, and then 2 reds, and you kind of get there.
Point being, don't be afraid to cut cards that at this stage don't really align with your deck. It'll save you a lot of stress. Because the moment you like draw one in a game and you like look at it and you go, wait a minute, I am not doing anything with this. I'm blocking with this card. A lot of the time, like, that'll kind of give you some direction. And again, you can tweak your deck as you go. That's the great part about deck building. You're never going to get it right 100% of the time. Oftentimes you're going to make changes as you go. But all right, now that we have our core game plan, we have our cards that we want to win the game with, or the cards that give our deck direction. We actually have to kind of answer a couple more questions regarding our game plan, right? So I think a good question to ask yourself is, how many resources per hand do I want to see? So now we've selected like our Gone into Flashes, and we've selected our Echo Flashes, and we've selected, is it Core Surge is like the 2-cost instant for New Cilia that you can play. Core Reaction. Yep. All right. Well, some of these cards cost resources. So you got to ask ourselves, how many resources per hand do we want? A very simple thing to think about is if you have a 60 card deck and you have 15 blues, on average, you will have 1 blue per hand. Obviously, as the game goes on, that percentage actually increases when you hit second cycle, because most of the time you're going to be pitching blues. But in general, a lot of good decks are constructed with that in mind. If I'm going to be playing Phi and I'm playing Embercleave, a lot of the time I'm going to want 1 blue per hand. 2 resources will go into my sword, and a lot of the time I'm going to play a finisher that costs 1, or I'm going to play a 1 for 4 go again that costs 1, or maybe I'll activate Phi with the extra resource after the first 2 attacks. Tweak it as you go a little bit. But the point being is that this is a very important question to ask, because if you were playing Guardian, you're not playing 50 reds. Unless you're playing an insane Guardian list that's running like Snatch and other stuff, and you're never paying for anything. But if like the average cost of a card in your deck is 3, you're going to want a lot of blues.
Yeah.
And that is going to definitely give you some deck building direction. We keep saying that word, but
I think it's a good word. It's like, hey, I'm drifting towards this direction. I think the Guardian example is great. I think there was a point in time when original Bravo was running like 36 blues, because you want to see them second cycle, you want to pitch them together with power cards, whatever it may be, so you can get those power cards off while your opponent hopefully has kind of exhausted their power and their strength with the cards that they're going there. If you're like, hey, I want to play Spinal Crush, Pulverize, and I don't know, something else. And I'm running 24 blues. It's like, well, you're probably not going to see the blues at the high enough density quick enough over the time to get that to work out. And you just end up just blocking Send a Hammer. And that's not a gameplay that's going to be conducive to long-term success and winning games.
Mm-hmm. Got to be able to pay for what you preach, honestly. I know like my first dabble into Guardian was Betsy. I think I was playing like 36 blues, which I thought was enough, and it just like wasn't, because the majority of my reds costed like 5
or 6. Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, if I draw a hand that only has 1 blue in it, guess I'm blocking with 3 reds and sending a hammer. And yeah, like you said, it's not great.
Yeah.
So.
And sometimes that happens. Like some, but again, like you can win games in deck building is what I like to say. It's like if I build my deck, or if I understand my deck, and this goes to a gameplay experience thing. You talked about if you're playing Fi and you're playing Emberblade, and you want to see 1 blue per hand, and you see a hand that has a couple hands in a row that don't have a blue, it's going to increase the likelihood that you're going to see 2 blues in a future hand. Mm-hmm. Like in understanding that, being like, okay, cool, I can block with one, I'll pitch with the other, and continue my game plan. Is like understanding, or like, oh, whatever your starter numbers for Fi or whatever it may be. It's like, hey, maybe I park one in Arsenal, so I know I'm going to have that in case I draw into a dead hand. And you're like playing toward those outs. And like, yes, maybe the deck building doesn't perfectly work out to the ratios and things like that you want. Cool, fine, whatever. That's going to happen. That's variance. That's TCGs. It's not going to be perfect. But if you understand what's in your arsenal or what you could potentially draw into, things like that, you're going to increase your chances to win that individual game, but you're also going to increase your overall win rate because you're playing to those better lines over time based on what you've seen in your deck, based on what you know is coming, because you've done kind of those little deck building things over the course of time.
Yeah. And a lot of that is more gameplay oriented, which that will be plenty of episodes in the future, I'm sure. But yeah, that is a good point, right? Is like understanding your deck list is a really good way to win games. For instance, if you're playing Old Cilio, and let's say you're on Gone in a Flash, what if you're like halfway through the game and you haven't seen a Gone in a Flash? Like you should start like having a couple alarm bells kind of ding, 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 and you should go, okay, maybe I want to, make sure my tunic's on 3. Maybe I want to Arsenal instant. Because
do I hold back playing the Sigil of Brilliance, and I maybe play towards a Blast to Oblivion line? Like there's again different things and understanding. We talked about this, the avenues. I'm still playing towards that game plan of I want to combo do XYZ, but maybe the combo that I'm looking for isn't there, so I have to go to something that's an alternative that still furthers what I'm trying to do.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of which, kind of moving on to our next section, we have synergistic cards. So these are the cards that are going to be in the majority of your matchups. They are cards that work well with your hero. They work well with your power cards. They essentially are the glue, or we're going to call, because we're going to keep going with this analogy because I love it, it's the cone. So if the power cards are your ice cream, and that's the part that's really cool and you want to show all your friends, the cone is what you hold it on. It makes sure that everything doesn't fall apart and you get like stains on your lap because you had your ice cream melt and it sucks. The cone's there for a reason. It keeps things in check. So I like to think of these kind of cards as the cards I will more often than not block with or pitch, but if I have full tempo in a game, they're cards that I'm happy to have.
Yeah.
So I think a really great example to this would be cards such as, let's name a card in Puffin, Soup Up. So Soup Up is one of my favorite cards in Puffin. It's a very, very synergistic card because I have a lot of items leaving the battlefield, and I have a lot of items that I can sacrifice to the Galvanize effect. So Soup Up is a 0-for-4 red rare card that has go again if item is left, and I can also block 2 with it or sacrifice an item to block 4. It is a very, very like glue cone oriented card that allows me to either play offensively if I'm ahead or defensively when I'm behind. Is it winning me the game on its own? No, because when it's offensive, it's a scar for a scar, and when it's defensive, it's just a block 4 with no text.
That's pretty good though.
That's pretty good. And that's a lot of the descriptions for these cards. That's pretty good. It's not great. It's not winning you the game. They're not all stars. But, every sports team needs a couple of those, like, solid bench players who can, go fill in when the star players are tired.
That's a really good example.
So,
yeah.
It's like, it's like Moneyball. Kind of. If anyone has seen this movie, I love this movie.
It's based on a book, but that's a different point.
Sure. I think the movie's really good, though. I like Brad Pitt a lot. So, the entire thing with Moneyball is, like, how much potency in my players as a baseball team can I get for as little money as possible. So a lot of these cards that you're putting in your deck is okay, like at worst, what is this? Is it a blue block 3? Is it a red 0-for-3 with go again? Like what does it do when you have full tempo, or what does it do when you're behind? These cards don't win the game of their own, but they accrue value or allow you to execute your game plan better in circumstances.
Yeah.
So, what's like one of your favorite utility blues?
Utility blues?
Yeah, like what's a card that you're putting in your deck?
Nebula Duality.
Okay, sure.
Like all the duality cards in like I was gonna say Ziggy and all the Omens hero, but Aurora really doesn't care for them. Sure. But it's a current funnel fills that role really, really well. It's a card you want, but it's not a power card. Current funnel being able to have go again itself and then give something in the future go again, super strong. But Nebula Duality, Cosmic Duality for Ziggy, you can block with it. It's a blue block 3, cool, great, whatever. Or it has like that, that hand trap, discard, instant ability, whatever you want to describe it. Like to do something that again is going to further your game plan. It's just 1 damage and a lightning flow, which isn't huge in the grand scheme of things. It's just like oh, it's 4 go again, like cool. It's like it's not in the grand scheme of things, it's not a lot, but like it could do things where it's like, hey, let's hypothetically say they let you hit that damage, and then let's say you had an instant go to grave and you have a strike twice in arsenal, and you're like, hey, I can send this out and leak extra damage in. It's going to allow you to kind of play into that game stand, which is really strong. Like, and I think those are things that we'd like when it works and it lines up and it furthers something, like it's really strong. Other than that, its base, its floor is just like, yeah, I don't hate this. And sometimes there are cards that are, I'm gonna call them the greedier cards, where you're like, hey, if I have this thing lined up and it works, I'm the best player in the world. And if you have this card and you're like, I have to block with this, and it just feels bad. Like a lot of 2 blocks fall in that range. Your flittering charges, your entwined lightnings, things like that, in the lightning pool. They play into that a little bit, but like there's cards where it's just like, yeah, I gotta block with this, cool, and you feel like you're not getting full value offensively. It doesn't fit. Like it's just like when it lines up, and we live in that nice happy magical Christmas land. It's awesome, and it's just like cool, we got this to work. And then there's times when it's like, well, it doesn't work. And I think for me, when I was playing old Acilio, before the bans, I was on Eclectic Magnetism. And magnetism felt into that. It was like, it was a glue piece. When it lined up, it was like, hey, this is really strong. It, it furthers the things that I'm doing. I can leak and push additional arcane. Awesome, cool, great. If not, like, I'm just gonna block with it. I'm gonna carry on, and I don't feel bad about that.
Yeah, it's these cards can kind of help you fill out your cost curve. Is also how I like to see them, right? Where it's like, okay, well, if I want 1 blue per hand, and I only have like 6 or maybe 9 blues in my deck already. What are the other blues I want to play? Okay, probably some ones that block 3. Maybe some ones that are situationally like better than just like 1 or 2 damage when I'm on the offensive. Flying Kick is a blue that I've always loved in Fi. It's a 2 for 2, I think, at base, but if it's your 3rd or higher chain link, it's a 2 for 4.
Yeah, or 2 for 5.
Yeah, it's like a pet card. Like, I don't think it's bad. I think it's really fine. Like, if you're ahead, you get to use it. If you're behind, you get to block with it. It's not bad. That's going to be a lot of these cards.
Yeah.
So, heading into kind of our final-ish topics, right? Something we also wanted to cover was in-class versus generic cards.
Yeah.
And Zach brought up a really good point with this. So our example is going to be equipment, right? There's a lot of generic equipment in the game at this point in time. And the famous one being Final Spring Tunic. Came out the first set of the game. Welcome to Wraith. We're heading into set 20, and this card is still a deck building archetype, is what I'd call it.
Consideration.
Every 3 turns, you get an extra resource. The extra resource can allow you to do some pretty busted things. Overrate things tend to happen if you have just an extra resource to do things with, which is great. And in our example, we want to talk about, like, okay, does my deck want a Tunic, or does my deck want a Tectonic Plating? So Tectonic Plating is a Guardian card that allows you to get some Seismic Surge tokens, and situationally, it can actually do more resource cheating than Tunic. But it's a little bit more shoelined? Shoehorned. That's the word. Shoehorned into making your Guardian attack actions cheaper. Right? It's not just not a generic resource you can use on anything. It's extra resources you can use on your attacks. That's a great question to ask when you are deck building is, okay, I've chosen a hero. They have a class. They most likely have a talent. What does that get me? What is their strengths? In Acilio's instance, the new Plutonic Starplate is, I'd argue, way better in Tunic in that deck.
Yep.
You're using it a lot more. It has Arcane Barrier staple on it, which is pretty cool. And it's just like, okay, yeah, this is something that I'm winning the game with. Now, stepping it down a little bit to lower powered cards, let's talk defense reactions. All right, so Sink Below. 0 for 4 D-React at red. Allows you to fix your hand a little bit. Staple of the game. Came out in the first set. Well, here's the question. If I'm playing the new Acilio, do I want to play Sink Below, or would I rather play the new Flittering...
Flittering Force Field?
Yeah, Flittering Force Field. Okay, well, let's talk about this, right? Pros and cons. One's generic. It's always blocking 4. It gives me a little hand fixing. The other is a lightning card, so it triggers my star plate on my opponent's turn, and also situationally blocks 4. So I'd rather have the extra resource, potentially, for my chess piece and playing a lightning card on my opponent's turn, or would I rather have the generic that's a little bit more, lower ceiling, it kind of, but higher floor. And that's the deck building, right? Is like, sometimes you're going to start playing games and you're going to find that card that is in your class that you have access to maybe just isn't as good, or maybe isn't always as good as the generic option.
Yeah. It's like also understanding, like, I think the great example, Tunic Tectonic, there is a world where you play both. You have both in the deck, and you bring them in for specific matchups, things like that. Cool, whatever. But maybe you live in a world where you can only choose one. Like, you need to identify the pros and cons for each and understand, like, hey, I'm going to play into, let's say, Tunic because I feel like I'm going to get more value over time with the consistency of that resource, because there's no guarantee that you're going to be able to convert that Seismic Surge token, because you might have to, cycle and sequence hands in specific ways to make sure you get the value. Maybe you have a 4-cost Guardian attack action card in hand. You have to hold that back with a blue, which means that if you want to set an arsenal, you have to only block with 1 card, and then you're set. So again, maybe it's better just to, Tunic float the resource, send the blue, and then again, you don't have to do the same thing and like, hey, give up arsenal or whatever it may be. You can play that situational game plan. You can play slower in those ways. You can lean into certain play styles, things like that as well. I think we saw a similar thing when Zen got released. This was 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
About questions like, what's Zen's equipment suite going to look like? Are you going to play into, Traverse the Universe and cheat cards, or are you going to go Mask of the Pouncing Links, or even Mask of Momentum, and try to force chain hits and on hits to get the extra card draw? Eventually, all the Zen decks kind of realized that, hey, Traverse cheat cards kind of broken, and this went with the thing that was more broken. But again, it was again that first initial phase of deck building. Um, the community asks those questions going back and forth. And I think Starplate is, if you're playing a lightning hero, Ziggy and New Acilio more so than some of the other ones, it's like being able to generate one resource per turn, pretty good.
Yeah. Having played a lot of Ziggy lately, that extra resource is insane.
Yeah.
I've been playing Cloud Cover in my deck recently, and then you get the extra resource off that.
Yep.
And then I've been using that to develop a Cosmic Space Dust on my opponent's turn, and then being able to sit on that until later when I want to convert that into a hollow countered aura with a higher amount of ward plus an Aphrodite trigger.
Yep.
It's sweet. I couldn't do this if I had Tunic.
Yeah.
So it's answering those questions. And now,
yeah, and I think something that, again, going back to New Acilio that we talked a lot about, is like if you play a lightning card, let's say Cloud Cover, again, really good example there, and then you can use that resource to play out an Absorb an Aether, which is going to give, if you find a way to send more Arcane, it's going to do some additional Arcane damage on that as well, which is, again, harder to do. You don't have to worry about pitching. You can just kind of make your own pitch by playing that lightning card out. And again, there's sequencing questions that come up with that type of stuff as well. But I think it's the same thing. Like we've seen the same thing with like Goliath gauntlets. Are you going to use that over a more specific class specific card? Like there's been a lot of cards over the years that have faded into that. But like it's also the same thing we talked about this last week. Is just like, do you want to run Command and Conquer, solid card, or do you want to run something that does a similar type of effect? That's more class specific, and maybe you can get additional value off of. Again, different. There's, again, CNC is a very good card. Being able to shut up defense reactions is strong, but understanding that and playing around that as well is important.
Yeah. And we are not saying this to discourage people from playing Command and Conquers. The card's broken.
Yeah.
Final Spring Tunic card's broken.
Yeah.
But we are saying is that when you are deck building, you open yourself up to having options depending on which hero you choose, and those heroes might give you side grades.
Yep.
Which I love that word.
Yep.
To generic cards that are good.
Yeah.
So depends what you want as the deck builder, which is cool. Now, Zach, we have our ice cream. We have our ice cream cone that's holding it together. My favorite ice cream is like Rocky Road, or like anything with like caramel or fudge. How about you?
Okay. I think I'm just like Moose Tracks.
Ooh.
So like peanut butter cups, like some fudge. Yeah.
Yeah. We like chocolate in this house then.
Yeah.
Okay, sweet. I'm not a huge sprinkles fan, so maybe I love
sprinkles.
Maybe I like a little
fun. They add this like fun into your life, and you need more fun in your life. We all do.
Maybe I like I like hot fudge on top of mine. There we go. There's my additional topping. So our additional topping is sideboarding. Sideboarding, I think, is where deck building gets really fun. I think this is the part I enjoy the most. And it's also the part where I probably lose the most games from. Funnily enough. So this is the sprinkles. These are cards 70 through 80 of your 80 card deck that allow you to have either a better game plan into extremely specific heroes, or a slightly better game plan into a wider variety of heroes. What we mean by this, right? Let's say we're constructing Aurora, right? So Aurora, as Zach has spoken to, it's a more aggressive deck. You want cards that cost 0. You want cards that have go again. You want to hit your opponent hard and fast, and you want to kill them before they're able to like execute their game plan, or you want to go over their blocks and kill them with on hits, whatever. All right. Well, certain matchups as Aurora, feel pretty bad when you don't have defensive tools. So I'd argue that Volda is a terrible matchup for Aurora because a lot of the time Volda is going to hit you with a large 7 to 10 damage attack that has an on hit that just says you don't get a turn. All right, well, a lot of my cards block too, and my instants don't block anything, so maybe I want some sideboard cards into Volda. Sink Below, as we just said, would be a considerable sideboard card for an aggressive deck. You don't want many, right? We're not shoving 3 sinks, 3 Fate for Scenes, and 3 Shelter from the Storms in your sideboard. Maybe you are. Maybe you really are just worried about that matchup for some reason. But maybe I want 3 copies of a 0 for 4 defense reaction. And I'm going to park those in my arsenal, and those are going to be my key pivot cards where I get to defend with 1/3 block from hand, and the Sink Below I've been waiting on for 2 turns, and I get to not get hit by their Spinal Crush, and I get to have my turn. That's awesome. So that's like a good sideboard usage, right? Sink Below also happens to be fairly good into other aggressive decks in the mirror matches. Let's say my opponent is attacking me with a red Snatch, and I don't want them to draw a card and have an arsenal. Okay, well, the Sink Below that I have for Volda is actually also applicable into the aggro mirrors.
Yeah.
So I'd argue that that's a good example of a kind of a wide net, so to speak, of where I am broadly fishing for an applicable card into multiple decks or multiple things across the field. Let's talk about a card that's like extremely silver bullet type thing. I'd argue that cards like Humble are...
I was going to say Weakest Link.
Or, yeah, Weakest Link's a great example, too. Let's use that one. Am I playing this into decks that don't have instants?
No.
No. End of sentence.
That's it.
Class dismissed. But no. Am I going to play this into decks that have instants that they want to deploy on their own turn? Yes. 100%. The thing about a card like Weakest Link is you're oftentimes only boarding it into 1 or maybe 2 heroes that you expect to see.
Yeah.
Cards like Sink Below, you arguably are boarding it into 3 to 7. Right? And it's up to you as the player to determine what your sideboard slots target. I think a good philosophy with this too is it is better to have sideboard cards that make a matchup even better than it is to have an entire sideboard that attempts to make 1 or 2 specific matchups playable. So what I mean by this, right, is you only have 80 slots. You cannot fit everything into your sideboard. If you could, there's a number of heroes who would be a lot better.
Yeah.
Azuri, for instance, right? If Azuri could have every single 2 for 6 on hit in the game just sitting here sideboard, oh my goodness, that deck would be so much better because all your on hits are applicable all the time. Unfortunately, you have 80 cards, so you can only target a number of things. I would rather have, let's say I'm going to face 10 heroes at a calling, 10 different heroes. I would rather have a 60% favorable matchup into 8 of those 10 rather than a 50 to 55% matchup into 8 of those 10, but then those final 2 are like 40% instead of 20.
Yeah.
Right? Like, if my deck is extremely bad into Gravy Bones, and I don't have very many of those people locally, I'm probably not boarding cards for Gravy Bones. I'm gonna board cards for the Syndras or the Asilios or the other people in the room. On the other hand, maybe there's a ton of Gravy Bones in my local area. I'm gonna be boarding in the Gravekeepings. I'm gonna be boarding in the other hate pieces that are like for good into ally decks. Maybe I'll put some Scar for Scars in there. So like, I don't know, what's a card in your Asilio sideboard that you would consider a very targeted?
Shelter from the Storm.
Sure.
It's not targeted, but it's generic. It's like it's good into the aggro decks. Those type of things. And then there's other cards in there. There's a lot of tools in there that are good for fatigue. So I have the Save the Thought, Tap Lessons packs, Arc Ramp package. So by being able to play that group together near the end of the game, I can push 9, 10, 11 damage off of a single card. And that gives you
Sweet.
the ability and the space to then kill over the top of an Arachne or a Jarl or those other slower decks that are kind of try to fatigue you out of damage.
Sure.
And it's a way for me because New Acilio does lack with the ability to create explosive damage. And so if you're playing a deck that's able to run AB3 and be preventative in those type of ways, like it's going to be hard for you to chip all the way down. But if you can set up a way to go over the top and press 10-ish damage, give or take, usually it's around 8. 8's the floor there. I think you can push it to 11 with some other circumstances going your way. But that's a different point. It's like if you can push that, you can kind of get things to go forward for you in that game plan wise. So again, I got 6 cards dedicated to those slower matchups because I know I'm going to see Arachnes and I know I'm going to see Jarls. So like it helps me in that regard, specifically locally. If I'm going to a calling playing this deck, somebody should check on me and I should play a different deck. So different point entirely.
Sure. In your instance, you're choosing to target kind of a broader net of decks. The Jarls, the Huntsmans, I'd argue even just like any Guardian in general that has AB3 into you, the Pleiades and the Betsies, even like the Lyeths and stuff. That's probably a great idea for the usage of your sideboard.
Yep.
If you're going to a pro quest and no one in your local area is on fatigue, we would consider those wasted slots.
Yep.
Right? Maybe those would be defense reactions instead if you expected a lot of aggressive decks in your area. The point being is that sideboard cards should be where you add a little bit of spice to your deck. A little bit more either proactive or reactive options to specific archetypes or specific heroes that you think you might see.
I think it also allows you as a deck builder to be like, hey, there are certain matchups or certain archetypes that I prefer to do this type of thing. And you can side in that card, the 2, the 3 of maybe it's a package of 6 cards, whatever it is. That allows you to express that as a deck builder and a player. And I think that's fun. Like you're like, hey, I'm playing against a mid-range AB2 type matchup. Like, hey, maybe I can get value off Magnetism or Astrovolt Elemental, be able to make an embodiment and then set that up for next turn, draw a card, XYZ, whatever that may be. Like, and if you're playing into that game plan, it's helpful in that regard. And I think that's, again, we see that at the Pro Tour levels is we see like these decks that are 76, 77 cards similar to each other, but then they're this random like 2 ofs and 3 ofs of certain decks that allow that deck builder, that player to kind of showcase like, hey, I think this about these type of matchups and I'm going to bring these cards in or have them available to me in my deck.
Yep. Yeah, I think that is very well said, right? Is a lot of the time you're not going to have 2 players playing the exact same 80 at the pro level. You're going to have them playing the same 70, 75, and then the rest of the cards are kind of like their dedicated slots to, oh, maybe I don't like this matchup. Maybe want to prepare more for this matchup. So sideboarding it's the sprinkles, the thing that's the finishing touches of the deck. So
yeah, 100%.
With that being said,
we made a sundae.
We've made an ice cream sundae, ice cream cone, whatever you want to call it. So it's now yours to enjoy. And the cool part about it is you can keep remaking it too. Obviously if you are able to afford more ice cream, which is great. Maybe you won't have very much money to afford ice cream if you're playing a trading card game, but I digress. So, without further ado, without rambling, my name is Carter, one of your hosts. I'm joined by Zach.
What's up?
You can find us at Revel and Wraith or Sigil of Something.
Sigil of Something, correct.
Here on YouTube. Please join our Discord. Links down in the description below. We really appreciate it. Can't wait to hear from all of you, all of your questions, all of your concerns. You want to tell?
If you guys have thoughts on the episode or want to engage, like, hey, you guys talked about, let's say it was specifically like, hey, how do I recognize like the synergistic pieces for my deck as I'm building? Like, throw those questions out. We'd love to, talk about that and like have that I always like to say this. We say this all the time, Carter. Like that academic conversation with this, because again, that's how I approach the game. You approach it a similar way as well. But again, those little things that help us all as a community, as individual players, get better as well. So if you got questions, feel free to throw them our way. If you got this feedback on the episode, put them in the comments down below, or again, join us on Discord. We'd love to talk with you guys about it there.
Yeah, I think that about covers it.
Yeah.
So thank you guys so much for watching. This has been episode 9 of Cast to Oblivion, Flesh and Blood, Deck Building 101. Maybe we do like a 102 sometime. It'd be kind of fun. But,
201. Level up.
Or 201. We'll level up a bit, yeah. Without further ado, we'll see you guys in our next episode. Bye-bye.
See ya.